Yeah, right. So a little context on all of this. The Social Security payroll tax cut was part of last year's tax agreement that also extended the Bush-era tax cuts. So without the extension, about 160 million Americans will see their taxes go up if they don't keep that payroll tax cut in there. For a family earning $50,000 a year, that amounts to a tax increase of about $1,000 for the year. So what are both sides going to do about this? Let's bring in our great panel today. Gretchen Hamel. And I've got Christopher Hahn in the prompter. So we'll go Christopher Hahn, former aide to Senator Chuck Schumer, also a Fox News contributor, and Gretchen Hamel is the former spokeswoman of the House Republican Conference and the executive director at Public Notice. Hey, welcome. Good to have you both here.
Good morning.
Great to be here.
Gretchen, let me go to you first. So basically the story is that behind closed doors, Boehner and Cantor said, look, hello, if you're a Republican, you simply cannot be on the side of raising people's taxes. End of story, period. This after Senator Jon Kyl basically said, you know what, if it's not paid for with cuts, with spending cuts, maybe we shouldn't go for it. What say you?
Well, this is something that they have been struggling with. They're trying to be a responsible party. They're trying to do this responsibly. And to do that responsibly, you have to find ways to pay for it. Now, everyone keeps talking about the identity crisis that Republicans are facing right now because they're not for tax cuts, they're for tax cuts. But what about the Democrats? Aren't the Democrats doing the same thing? Just last week, they were wanting to raise taxes. Now they're wanting to cut taxes. Aren't they facing the same crisis?
Are you, Chris? Are you facing a personal identity crisis, Christopher Hahn?
You know, I'm quite comfortable with my identity. We want to make sure that the middle class gets their tax cuts and that the wealthiest Americans are paying their fair share. It's simple as that. Now, Republicans never cared about how we were going to pay for tax cuts when we were giving away the Bush tax cuts, which cost us trillions of dollars on our deficit. So now that they found this new religion, if the middle class, if people like you and me, if hardworking people here on Long Island, which is part of the United States, I might add, are going to...
We'll get to that later. Senator McCain picked on Long Island, and whoo, was your former boss mad about that. Senator Heller from Nevada had an idea about how to pay for it. He said you should cut the federal workforce by 10% over a period of 5 years. He also said you should trim benefits for the wealthiest Americans. So my question for you, Chris, is why not trim benefits for the wealthiest Americans? And I'm assuming he means, you know, sort of means testing for some of the entitlements. Why not just do that instead of raising taxes on the wealthiest Americans? You could get the money that way. Are you okay with that?
Well, you know, listen, Simpson-Bowles kind of called for that, and I have supported Simpson-Bowles, and I think a lot of Democrats support Simpson-Bowles, and I am for some sort of means testing, but I'm not for holding this up so that many Americans, middle-class, hardworking people, have a tax increase when they can least afford it. I think that the Republican Party's got to get their act together, or they're losing their biggest issue next year.
But Gretchen,
they're painting it to a corner.
But Gretchen, you know, the biggest issue for Republicans seems to be, look, you have to be fiscally responsible. If you're going to give people money, you have to find some way to pay for it, right? And so are they giving up that part of their argument if they say, oh, you know what, we just can't back off this payroll tax cut right now?
You know, first of all, we should be making those cuts anyways. We should be freezing that pay. We should be scaling back benefits for those who can afford more. We should be doing that anyway. The fact that we're having this now because of payroll taxes is ludicrous. That's Band-Aid budgeting, and we don't need to do that. We need to be making permanent choices and reining in our debt. But, you know, going back to what Chris said, I hope he and I have an opportunity to sit here next year when we are talking about the Bush tax cuts. And I would love to use his talking points against him then, because that's exactly what we will be doing. We will be raising taxes on all those middle Americans that he's so concerned about right now. We're all concerned about them, but it's funny how he uses those talking points when they're convenient for him.
Well, you know, but
Chris?
Well, Martha, here is the thing. Republicans have always said that tax cuts pay for themselves. Here's one that I think actually does, because it puts the money in the pockets of Americans who will actually spend that money. If you're a working class, you're middle class in America, you get a tax cut like this, you spend it. Listen, the Bush tax cuts to the middle class help. Gretchen, here's the thing. If you're rich, you've got enough money to do whatever you want. You don't need the federal government giving you more.
Hey, if you're rich, you're probably employing Americans.
That's why I'm saying that it looks like this senator from Nevada, the other senator from Nevada, Senator Heller, may have touched on something. Why don't you trim benefits for the wealthy instead of raising taxes on the wealthy? And it sounds to me like both of you agree on that. So how come we can't get the folks in Congress to agree to basically change the tax code, trim benefits, do some means testing? Those ideas are something that resonated, I think, so much with the American people, and they're just shaking their heads going, why isn't that just happening?
Because they're putting politics before economics. That's it.
Apparently they are. Chris, last thought, and then we got to go.
Well, that's, Gretchen and I aren't standing for election, but we agree on that. I think, listen, Simpson-Bowles was very clear. Simpson-Bowles needs to be revisited in the Congress.
Why doesn't the president go back to Simpson-Bowles, Chris, and then I got to go? Why not? Why isn't he doing it?
The president has been pointing to Simpson-Bowles a lot lately, and I think you're going to see him return to that.
He had the opportunity to push for it, and he didn't.
All right.
So did Ryan, and Ryan voted against it twice.
All right. So. Thanks, you guys, Gretchen and Chris.
Thanks for having us.
My best goes out to all the people of Long Island. Sorry about that insult from
Thank you. We really
appreciate
that.
As a New Jerseyer,